My Conklin pen is the most expensive pen that I own, and it's the worst writing pen that I own. I'm sorry to hear that, man. I just replaced the nib and it does not write much better. My Lamy Vista, very inexpensive, is as good as any other pen that I've tried. How do you suggest buying a pen online, especially when you get to the top end without trying it first? All right, first thing I'll say is I wouldn't really consider Conklin to be top end. I don't know specifically what Conklin pen you have. We only carry the two least expensive pens that Conklin has. They have other pens that get into the hundreds of dollars. The most expensive one we have is the All-American, which is about $76, which a lot of people would consider to be an expensive pen. Now that we are getting into things like Visconti and all that, you're getting into $1,000 pens. Those I would consider to be expensive pens. A lot of it's relative, so I don't know exactly where you're coming from. I don't know specifically what Conklin pen you have, but I know they all share the same nibs. So I'm sorry to hear that you're having a bad experience there. I also don't know specifically what it is about your pen, so I could have kind of cut out that because I don't want to focus too much on the Conklin part of your question, Russ, because it really kind of requires a little more information to troubleshoot, which by all means, just like I said in the last question, you can shoot us an email at info@gouletpens.com. We're happy to help you more specifically troubleshoot that. Other than speaking in super broad generalities, I can't really get into it. Other than I can say some of the Conklin nibs that we've seen have been a little tight. The tines have been a little tight together. So sometimes there are issues with it starting or flowing well. Just pressing on them a little bit. This is feedback I've given to them, but depending on when you got the pen and stuff like that, they may not have kind of addressed it yet. We have seen it getting better. You know, just pressing on it, almost like you're trying to flex it a little bit. You know, just take it easy, but try that. Try flexing it out a little bit to increase that flow, if that is your issue. Again, I don't know specifically, so I'm going to focus more on the latter half of your question, which is how do you suggest buying a pen online, especially when you get to the top end? So this is definitely something that has become, you know, a very important part kind of what we do around here. Because when originally Goulet Pen Company first started out, all we sold was ink and paper. We didn't do anything with pens. And then when we got into pens, it was like the Platinum Preppy, Pilo Varsity, Noodler's pens, very kind of low-end stuff, and we would still have to troubleshoot quite a bit. But when you have a $10, $15, $20 pen, you know, the barrier to entry is fairly low. You get excited about it, you read good reviews, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna buy it and try it out. Okay, cool, yeah, I get it, meets my expectations. Your expectations are a little bit lower. When you get into a $600 or $700 Visconti Homo Sapiens or a $1,000 Opera Master, okay, that's a bit bigger of an investment. Why would you buy that pen sight unseen? It definitely gets to be a little riskier, you know what I mean? So there are some significant hurdles to overcome for me as a retailer, for you as a pen enthusiast, that I would like to talk about right now, basically. So I try to think through some of this stuff, you know, because we do come at this a lot, and it is kind of an issue. And it's as an online retailer, it's one of the most challenging, it's probably the most challenging thing that I face, because I don't have a physical store where I have you in the store and I can see how you're holding the pen. I can see that you're rotating it just a little bit too much, and if you rotate it back just a bit, it fixes all of your problems. That kind of stuff is real, and you can see that when you're in person. If you ever go to a pen show and you have something tuned by a nibmeister, being there in person, oh my gosh, 1,000 times easier than trying to do it online or over the phone. But this is the world we live in, you know what I mean? Like, especially as an online retailer here, this is my world. So I have personally done a number of things to try to bridge that gap. You know, essentially a lot of the mission that we've had for Goulet Pens is to try to make the best of the online experience using things like video, where I can shoot one video like this and thousands of people can see it, as opposed to a brick and mortar store where it's only who's physically in the store that I would get to talk to, and you'd forget 90% of what I say, because they say you only remember about 10% of a conversation. Whereas a video, you can watch and watch and watch it over and over again. So there are a number of very fantastic things online that you can do. You can see fantastic pictures of everything. You can read other people's reviews. You can get a lot of information. However, you don't get to physically hold the pen in your hand, which is the biggest downfall of buying online. No question about it. I am not unrealistic about that challenge. There are a number of things that I personally have tried to do to bridge that gap. One of them is great photography, great information on the website, educating you as much as possible so that you know what you like, you know how things compare to each other. Having online reviews, so we have a very robust review system on our site with, I think at this point it's something like 60,000 reviews for all of our products. So, you know, we've got a very robust site at this point with a lot of really great reviews that we don't doctor up in any way. They're just very genuine kind of reviews that are out there that you can see from other people that have used them. Other people's blogs, forums, things like that. Getting people that, especially people that you know and trust. Like if you find that you have a lot of similar pens to a particular reviewer, whether it's me, Stephen Brown, Matt Armstrong, whoever, Brad Dowdy, I don't know, just throwing names out, Ziza, throwing names out there. If you've got a lot of similar pens and you find you have similar tastes, when you see them do a review and they say, oh my gosh, I love this pen, it's so much like this other pen, and you're like, I love that other pen, I would probably love that pen too. Things like that, educating yourself, getting trusted kind of reviewers, that can make such a big difference. If you know anybody personally that has pens and you get to try them yourself, that's a great way. A lot of people, you know, especially on Fountain Pen Network and stuff, start local clubs and meetups and stuff like that. You can definitely get into that. Look up what might be in your area and see if there's any local meetups, and you can bring your whole pen collection and you can, you know, like, trade and kind of use each other's pens and just get to see. That can be a great way to do it, especially because then you're not in a having to be pressured to make a purchase on the spot kind of thing like you would be if you're at a store in a show or something like that. If you're in a more casual environment, you get to really test it and you get to talk to real people that are using it. Not that I'm not a real person, but you know, definitely I have a motive to try to sell you a pen, you know what I mean? And I'm not going to try to skirt around that. I still try to be very genuine in my approach towards all the products that I carry, but even still, when you're talking to a friend or whatever, they're going to be very open and free and share with their opinion about you. And it's still good to just get as many opinions as you can before you're making, especially a significant pen purchase. If you're looking to make a purchase on a pen that's several $100s or more, it's good to try to gather as much information as possible. Some other tools that we've done on our site, the Nib Nook, so you can see the writing samples as they compare literally every pen that's ever come through this place. We have done a writing sample. I personally have done a writing sample in Noodler's Black on Rhodia number 16, not number 16, number 18. Rhodia doesn't really matter, but Rhodia dot pad paper. So consistent as much as possible, so you can see how does a Pilot vanishing point stub compare to a Lamy or TWSBI stub. You know, so you can see that stuff through that online tool. Also have a tool called the Pen Plaza, where we photograph with great consistency and accuracy head-on a pen on dot pad paper, so you can see how does the grip compare on a vanishing point to a TWSBI 580, whatever. And you can see side by side in the same scale those pens next to each other. So you can see the length, you can see the grip, you can see the cap, you can see all these different things and how they compare in size. That can also help. If you know you love the grip on whatever, Lamy Safari, if you happen to love that. You can pull up a Lamy All-Star, you're like, wow, they really are the identical grip. I'm probably gonna love the All-Star, just as an example. So that can help. Also, if you notice as you go shopping specifically online, you'll notice that pretty much all the pricing of pens specifically is 20% off. That's kind of the minimum like advertised pricing that you'll see. That's kind of a standard just kind of throughout, you know, the street price, if you will, for most pens online. 20% off the MSRP, manufacturer suggested retail price, because there is an inherent risk when you're buying a pen online because you aren't getting to hold it in your hand. You know, whereas if you're in a brick and mortar store, you would, you know, and most of them, not everybody, but you know, most of them would probably let you ink up the pen and hold it and use it and stuff like that before you make a sale. So before you make a purchase. So that right there, you know, usually you're going to pay a little bit more in a brick and mortar situation. Not always the case, but they're generally going to stick more to the MSRP. Whereas online, you're kind of already getting a discount, whether you think about it that way or not, but that's kind of how it works as kind of an industry standard, if you will. It's not like there's no like price fixing or anything like that, but I'm saying like in general, just looking around, that's kind of what the pricing usually tends to be. Not always the case. There are some brands where it's, you know, kind of full list price and there is no exceptions to that kind of thing. Those are kind of more the exception than the rule. But in general, that's kind of what is what I view it to be. And then, you know, it really helps too if you are kind of really into pens, which if you're looking at more expensive pens, you're probably not buying a $500 pen on a whim. You probably have a number of pens and you're kind of into it. Building up a relationship with a particular retailer can help a lot. I know specifically, I mean, I can only really speak to us because this is my world here. I don't shop at other retailers, so I don't really know. I just know kind of general reputations and stuff. But with us, I know we have a customer care team of 7 people that, you know, and not even including Drew, the manager, just 7 people who are just on there every day trying to help you out as much as possible. And definitely, it's the case where if you like a particular person, you know, you have a good relationship with them, they'll talk to you, you'll email back and forth, you'll be on the phone, whatever. You know, we try to make it literally our business's purpose is to prove that business can be personal. So writing is a very personal experience. If you find that you like the advice that a particular person has, you can reach out to that person and kind of like build rapport with them. Or maybe you like to watch my videos and you know that you kind of like me and what I talk about. Hopefully you do if you're watching this. I try to be very genuine and straight up. I've got my own preferences. Not everybody likes the stuff that I talk about, and I don't like some of the things. I'll just throw it out there. Lamy CP1, don't get it. You know, a lot of people love that pen. It's not for me. You know, I'll say that right out, just as an example of, yeah, I sell Lamy CP1s, but I don't like them, personally. I like the style, but I don't like writing with it. That's just my flavor, and I'll say that outright, but you might love it. So, you know, there's just a kind of a thing I'll throw out there. Not trying to pick on you, Lamy, sorry, but gotta be real. In general, though, we try to be pretty understanding, and when we approach situation of someone not having a good expectation of a pen, or they're looking to make a big purchase, the whole like customer support thing really becomes a big factor, especially when you're getting to these really expensive pens, because the more expensive a pen is, you know, basically from a retailer standpoint, if you think purely about a logistical side of things, taking out the customer support side of things, if I'm buying and shipping a pen, selling and shipping a pen, it's not much more expensive for me to do a $1,000 pen than it is a $10 pen, just in practicality. Yes, of course, there's like higher credit card fees and more logistics and more cash up front and all this. Yes, it's more expensive to sell more expensive pens, but generally speaking, it's not like, you know, proportionally, yes, if you could sell $1,000 pens all day long as a business person, you would make more money if you sold the same number as you would a $10 pen. Obviously, the math is there. Of course, the demand is not there, and it's more customer support, and it's a lot harder to, you know, kind of, you know, from a customer support side of things and education and all that kind of stuff to sell these more expensive pens. So typically what you run into is deeper discounting on more expensive pens, because people who don't provide customer support, or people who just want to try to move it because the more expensive pens cost a lot more money to keep on your shelf as a retailer. I'm giving you some retailer insights here. You know, more expensive pens cost more money. Did you know that? What a surprise. So, you know, typically if somebody's hurting for cash, they will try to unload some of their more expensive inventory. So you'll see deeper discounting and sales and stuff going on with more expensive pens, because it's, you know, less work logistically to ship and process a more expensive pen than it is, you know, the same dollar equivalent of less expensive pens. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense to you. I hope I'm not coming across as like too like business-like and all this kind of stuff, but it's an important kind of thing for you to understand from a retailer's perspective. Kind of, you know, this is part of the insights that I can perhaps lend you that maybe your average pen reviewer wouldn't have. But anyway, so in that way, when you're looking to buy a pen online, the customer support side of things, and I'm extremely biased because we have very heavily weighed our way of doing business towards the customer service side of things. We provide a ton of education and tools on our site ahead of time so that you're as educated as possible before you even spend a dollar. You can watch our videos, you can reach out to our customer care team by email, phone, live chat, you name it. You can do that stuff as much as is to your liking. You can look at blogs and forums. All that stuff is free education, as much as you want before you spend a dime. So that right there has value to it. We just tend to go on the side of front loading that value to try to build your loyalty and trust and educate you so that you know more what you want before you make the purchase, so that it lowers the risk of just not knowing at all what you're getting. and I'm trying to educate this stuff all day long. And then the flip side of that is, once you make a purchase, what happens after the sale? Are you going to have some support afterwards? If it doesn't write quite like you expect, or you're having trouble filling it or cleaning it or whatever, it's just not working right like you think. So that's a really, really important part of it. And if you're just buying it, you know, from a used pen on eBay, just as an example, I'm not trying to pick on eBay, but if you're buying a used pen from just somebody on eBay, you're not going to get any support. You're going to have to go and find your own answers somewhere, or just figure it out yourself. Whereas if you're buying it from an established retailer that you have built rapport with, your support is going to be there, and they're going to be able to help you troubleshoot it or help you return or exchange it if there's an issue with the pen and all that. So there is a value to that, and you're going to have to determine kind of for yourself what's most important to you, because with a plethora of online retailers, you know, fountain pens are not highly commoditized, but there are a number of options that you have. I'm realistic about that. I try to make myself, Goulet Pen Company, my company, the best option for you, but it's not for everybody. I totally understand that. I'm not trying to be everything for everyone, but I'm trying to be the best version of who we can be for those of you who find value in that. So we try to provide as much value as possible for what we do. So that's kind of where I'll leave it there. So it is a huge barrier to cross when you're buying specifically expensive pens online. And as in recent, really in the last year, as Goulet has gotten into kind of that more expensive echelon of pens, that is something that I'm really thinking hard about. How can I truly add value in a new way that's not been done before with these really expensive pens? I'm trying to rack my brain to think about that really hard, because it's definitely not business as usual. It's not the same for you buying a Homo sapiens or an Opera Master as it is buying a Pilot Metropolitan. I know that. So I'm going to be thinking about this quite a bit, and I do want some feedback on that too. That'll be the question of the week, which I'll get to in a little bit, but it'll be related to how to better do that.